Have you ever had a moment where everything you thought you knew suddenly changed? A moment when your entire worldview shifted and you saw things in a completely new light? Maybe it was when you learned a shocking truth about history, or when a scientific discovery turned your understanding of the world upside down. Or perhaps it was a personal revelation that made you question your beliefs and values. These moments of profound change, these paradigm shifts, are what we're exploring today on CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf. I'm your host, and we're diving into one of the most influential books about how our understanding of the world evolves, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas S. Kuhn. Now you might be thinking, a book about scientific revolutions? How does that apply to me? Well, stick with me, because the insights from this book go far beyond the world of science. They touch on how we think, how we learn, and how we adapt to change in every aspect of our lives. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to explore how paradigm shifts happen, why they're often resisted, and how understanding them can help you navigate change in your personal and professional life. We'll look at real-world examples from historical scientific breakthroughs to modern business transformations, and I'll share some personal stories along the way. By the end of this episode, you'll have a new perspective on change and progress, and some practical tools for recognizing and adapting to the paradigm shifts happening around you right now. So, let's start by going back in time to an era when everyone believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. Imagine you're living in the 16th century. You look up at the night sky and you see the stars and planets moving around the Earth. It seems obvious that we're at the center of everything. This idea isn't just a casual observation, it's deeply ingrained in the scientific and religious beliefs of the time. It's a paradigm, a framework for understanding the world that shapes everything from astronomical calculations to philosophical debates. But then along comes a Polish astronomer named Nicholas Copernicus. He proposes a radical idea. What if the Earth isn't the center of the universe? What if, instead, the Earth and all the other planets revolve around the Sun? This idea doesn't just change our understanding of astronomy, it shakes the very foundations of how people see their place in the cosmos. It challenges religious doctrines and philosophical principles that have stood for centuries. This, my friends, is a paradigm shift in action. And it's exactly the kind of transformation that Thomas Kuhn explores in The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Kuhn's book, first published in 1962, challenged the prevailing view of how science progresses. Before Kuhn, many people thought of scientific progress as a steady, cumulative process. Scientists would make discoveries, add them to the existing body of knowledge, and gradually build a more complete understanding of the world. But Kuhn saw something different. He argued that the history of science isn't a smooth, linear progression. Instead, it's punctuated by these revolutionary shifts, paradigm shifts, that completely transform how we understand the world. Think about it like this. Imagine you're putting together a jigsaw puzzle. The traditional view of science would say that we're all working on the same puzzle, gradually adding pieces until we have a complete picture. But Kuhn's view is more like suddenly realizing you've been working on the wrong puzzle altogether, dumping out all the pieces, and starting over with a completely different picture in mind. This idea of non-linear progress isn't just applicable to science, it's a powerful way of understanding change in all areas of life. In our personal growth, in business, in society, we often experience long periods of incremental change followed by sudden, transformative shifts. Let me share a personal example. For years, I approached my work with the belief that success came from pushing harder, working longer hours, always striving to do more. I was making progress, but I often felt burnt out and unfulfilled. Then I encountered the idea of working smarter, not harder. It sounds like a cliché, I know, But really internalizing this concept was a paradigm shift for me. I started focusing on productivity techniques, prioritizing tasks based on impact rather than just crossing items off a to-do list. I began valuing rest and recovery as essential parts of the work process, not just as time off. This new paradigm didn't just change how I worked, it changed how I viewed success, how I structured my days, even how I thought about my worth as a person. This personal paradigm shift mirrors what Kuhn describes in Scientific Revolutions. There was a period of normal work within my old paradigm, where I was just trying to optimize within my existing framework. Then came a crisis, burnout and dissatisfaction, which opened me up to a new way of thinking. And finally, a shift to a new paradigm that transformed my approach to work and life. Now let's dive deeper into how Kuhn describes this process in science and how we can apply these ideas more broadly. Kuhn introduces us to the concept of normal science. This is the day-to-day work that scientists do within an established paradigm. It's not about making earth-shattering discoveries, but about solving puzzles within the accepted framework of understanding. Think of normal science like playing a game of chess. The rules are set, and your job is to figure out the best moves within those rules. You're not questioning whether the knight should move in an L shape or if the board should have 64 squares. You're just trying to win the game as it's defined. In the world of business, normal work might be optimizing processes, incrementally improving products, or gradually expanding into adjacent markets. In our personal lives, it might be working towards established goals, following accepted social norms, or pursuing traditional paths of education and career advancement. But here's where it gets interesting. As scientists, or chess players, or businesses, or individuals work within their paradigm, they sometimes encounter anomalies. Things that don't quite fit the established understanding. At first, these anomalies might be dismissed as errors or flukes, but over time, if they accumulate and resist explanation, they can lead to a crisis. Let me give you a scientific example. In the late 19th century, physicists were working within the paradigm of Newtonian physics. This framework had been incredibly successful in explaining the motion of planets, the behavior of gases, and much more. But as they studied phenomena like black body radiation and the photoelectric effect, they kept running into problems that couldn't be explained by classical physics. This accumulation of anomalies led to a crisis in physics. The old paradigm wasn't working anymore, at least not for these new phenomena. This crisis set the stage for a paradigm shift, the development of quantum mechanics, which completely transformed our understanding of the subatomic world. Now let's bring this back to our daily lives. Have you ever experienced a growing sense that something in your life or work just isn't fitting anymore? Maybe it's a career that once felt fulfilling but now leaves you unsatisfied, or a relationship that used to work but now feels strained. These are your anomalies, the signs that your current paradigm might not be adequate anymore. Now let's talk about what happens during a paradigm shift. Kuhn introduces us to a fascinating concept here, incommensurability. This is the idea that the old and new paradigms are often so different that they're difficult to directly compare. It's not just that the new paradigm is better in some straightforward way, it's that it fundamentally changes how we see and interact with the world. Think back to our Copernican revolution example. The shift from an Earth-centered to a Sun-centered model of the solar system wasn't just about which object was in the middle. It changed the very questions that astronomers asked, the way they interpreted their observations, even the meaning of concepts like motion and rest. This idea of incommensurability helps explain why paradigm shifts can be so difficult and controversial. It's not just about accepting new facts, it's about learning to see the world in a completely new way. We see this in the business world all the time. Consider the shift from traditional retail to e-commerce. It's not just about selling products online instead of in stores. It changes everything. How you manage inventory, how you market products, how you interact with customers, even how you think about what a store is. Companies that succeeded in making this shift didn't just add a website to their existing operations. They fundamentally reimagined what it means to be a retailer. Or think about the shift to remote work that many of us experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. This wasn't just about doing the same work from a different location. It changed how we collaborate, how we measure productivity, how we balance work and personal life. It required a fundamental shift in how we think about work itself. These shifts can be disorienting and challenging. When you're in the middle of a paradigm shift, it can feel like the ground is moving under your feet. But they're also where the most profound growth and innovation happen. And given how transformative paradigm shifts can be, you might wonder, why don't they happen more often? Why do established paradigms persist even when they're facing mounting anomalies? Kuhn provides some fascinating insights into this. He points out that paradigms are incredibly resilient. They're not just ideas, they're entire systems of thought, practice, and institutional structure. They shape how we perceive the world, what questions we ask, even what we consider to be valid evidence. This resilience can be a good thing. It allows for stable, focused work within a paradigm. It's what enables the puzzle solving of normal science, but it can also lead to a kind of intellectual inertia, where anomalies are ignored or explained away, rather than prompting a re-evaluation of the paradigm itself. We see this resistance to change in many areas of life. In business, established companies often struggle to adapt to disruptive innovations, even when the writing is on the wall. Kodak, for instance, invented the digital camera but failed to embrace it, clinging to their film-based paradigm until it was too late. In our personal lives, we often resist changing our beliefs or habits, even when they're no longer serving us well. We might stay in unfulfilling jobs or relationships, stick to outdated goals, or maintain harmful behaviors, all because they're part of our established paradigm. But Kuhn argues that crisis plays a crucial role in overcoming this resistance. When anomalies accumulate to the point where they can no longer be ignored or explained away, it creates an opening for new ideas. Crisis weakens the hold of the existing paradigm and makes people more receptive to alternatives. This is why times of crisis, while challenging, can also be incredibly fertile periods for innovation and personal growth. They create the conditions for paradigm shifts to occur. I've seen this play out in my own life and in the lives of many entrepreneurs I've worked with. Often it's a crisis, a business failure, a health scare, a personal loss that pushes us to reevaluate our paradigms and consider new ways of thinking and living. For me, it was a period of burnout and disillusionment in my corporate career that finally pushed me to consider a completely different path. The crisis weakened my attachment to my old paradigm of success and opened me up to new possibilities. So how can we apply these insights in our own lives? How can we become more adept at recognizing and navigating paradigm shifts? Here are a few practical suggestions. 1. Cultivate awareness. Pay attention to anomalies in your life and work. What doesn't fit? What problems persist despite your best efforts to solve them within your current framework? These could be signs that you need a paradigm shift. 2. Embrace crisis as opportunity. When you encounter a crisis, whether personal or professional, try to approach it not just as a problem to be solved, but as a potential catalyst for transformation. Ask yourself, what assumptions is this crisis challenging? What new possibilities might it be opening up? 3. Seek out diverse perspectives. Exposure to different viewpoints can help you recognize the limitations of your current paradigms and open you up to new ways of thinking. Read widely, engage with people from different backgrounds, and be willing to have your assumptions challenged. 4. Practice mental flexibility. Regularly engage in activities that stretch your mind and challenge your assumptions. This could be learning a new skill, tackling problems outside your area of expertise, or engaging in thought experiments. 5. Be willing to let go. Recognize that embracing a new paradigm often requires letting go of old ideas, even ones that have served you well in the past. This can be uncomfortable, but it's often necessary for growth and innovation. 6. Start small. You don't have to revolutionize your entire life overnight. Look for small areas where you can experiment with new paradigms. These small shifts can often lead to larger transformations over time. As we wrap up, I want to emphasize that understanding paradigm shifts isn't just an academic exercise, it's a powerful tool for navigating change in all areas of life. By recognizing the structure of how fundamental change occurs, we can become more adaptable, more innovative, and better equipped to thrive in a rapidly changing world. Kuhn's insights remind us that progress isn't always linear or comfortable. It often involves periods of crisis and fundamental re-evaluation of our most basic assumptions. But it's through these challenging periods that the most profound advancements occur, both in science and in our personal lives. So, I encourage you to embrace the paradigm shifts in your life. Be open to new ways of thinking, challenge your assumptions, and remember, the next crisis you face might just be the catalyst for your next big breakthrough. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the structure of scientific revolutions. If you want to dive deeper into Kuhn's ideas, you can find a link to purchase the book in the episode description. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and stay open to those paradigm shifts.